Hi, I'm Dr. Natasha Thapar-Olmos, Associate Professor of Psychology and Director of Online Psychology Programs here at GSEP. And I'm delighted today to have a chance to sit with Dr. Stephen Beazley and hear a little bit more about his background. How are you doing?
Very good.
It's nice to have a chance to chat with you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, of course.
So could you maybe talk a little bit about your role here at Pepperdine?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm new and in some ways I'm very old here, in some sense. Because I started here in 1993 getting my master's degree, and then I went in to get my doctorate in the PsyD program here, and then I taught for 4 years. So I have this first kind of leg of my journey of my career with Pepperdine in terms of being a student and then an alumnus and then teaching. But then I decided it was time to branch out and kind of go out and test the knowledge that I have just gotten, test the limits of what I thought I was capable of, and really look for a lane in psychology or maybe even just in the workplace that I thought I could apply not only what I had learned in the program, but also match that with my own talents and my interests to create a brand for myself. Because we know in psychology, we are the product. We may have a degree, but we are what we are marketing. So I decided to go out in the world and try some of those things that Pepperdine had taught me, both in a scholarly way and as well as in a kind of a personhood way, which is a good component of this program. So I went into business. I kind of wandered all over, trying my best to see how many ways I could use my psychology doctorate to move through different fields and different avenues and get this diversity of experience that all had to do with psychology because they all had to do with human behavior, but they weren't necessarily traditional psychological settings.
So when you started your master's program in psychology, did you have a sense of where you wanted to end up? And did that change at all, or?
Yeah, I'm almost hesitant to talk about that because I didn't even start my bachelor's, which I got at Cal State Long Beach. I didn't even start that till I was 29 years old.
Okay.
So I didn't start college till I was almost 30. But by the time I did, I went straight through, got my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate. So I ran straight through those 8 years.
Okay.
So it's linear in the sense that I went straight through, but it's not in the sense that I took my 20s and went off and did other, I would say, non-traditional educational pursuits, like I studied in a conservatory to be an actor. I studied voice to sing in a band. So I did all these things that maybe ironically and maybe not ironically at all, because there are no coincidences, all of these things that I did in my artful pursuits were actually readying me to study the field of psychology, because it's obvious that the two have in common, the fields of art and entertainment and psychology, have this core belief in empathy, understanding human behavior and portraying it in the sense of entertainment and helping to either correct it or modify it in psychology. So I found like the two paths that I was taking was kind of a 1 + 1 = 3. I was able to capitalize on the artistic side of me, but then when I went into the science and art of psychology, it really was a really excellent combination of experiences that allowed me to be just about any type of professional that I wanted to be.
So what was it like for you then taking psychology into the business world?
Well, I think one of the obvious things is, if you just look at a family systems model, for instance, a company is just a family systems. I used to say to a company that I was the CEO of, I used to stand before them, and after I said it about the 10th time, they would roll their eyes. But nonetheless, it became a mantra of sorts. And I would say, in our best days in this company, it's because we act like a family. In our worst days in this company, it's because we act like a family. So those types of skill sets of not only just interpersonal dynamics that you might get in a course in group therapy, but really looking at it because I think it's nearly impossible and probably not expected that we all check our backgrounds at the door. When we walk into a class, whether we teach it or whether we are enrolled in it, we bring our backgrounds with us. The same would be true with the workplace. You don't check your background at the door. You try to manage it in a professional way, but certainly personality dynamics in a company can make or break things like efficiency, productivity, even profit and loss statements can be made or broken by human dynamics within the context of that company. And it's not just HR per se, because HR is a transactional, but it's really looking at how you can put together teams of people who have similar yet just enough differences to create cohesive work units. And the final point to that is, in most companies, departments work well. Success of companies comes between two departments working well together, not within departments as much as between departments. And if you just look at the within and between model, that is a typical model in psychology, even going back to research methods and statistics and analysis of variance. So you take it as a metaphor and you move it into the workplace, and it works the same way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So did you like being the CEO? Is that too general of a question?
I liked setting tone. I liked that a lot, and showing leadership. I love the leadership portion of it, but probably like most CEOs, the management portion is what will take its toll. There's the saying that management is doing things right or correctly, and leadership is doing right things. I like to be thinking about how to do right things. I always wanted somebody else to think about how to do things right. And so if I got the right team to delegate to, like a very competent CFO, can do right things, it can or things right, it can leave me to do right things. But that has to be a situation that the CEO as a manufacturer and always is not fortunate enough to get the team that they want around them. So those are the challenges, but yet those are the ideals that lead you into a leadership position like that, of that sense of wanting to be a leader and then build managers along the way.
So now here at Pepperdine and in this, your current sort of, I guess, what is it, your current stint at Pepperdine? Your return,
2.0.
Your return to Pepperdine. So I know you're in a full-time teaching and administrative role now. Could you talk a little bit about that, and particularly your role in the online program?
Well, what it does probably for the first time in my career, because I've either been in academics or business, and they never really melded into one. So this is one of the, and that's what attracted me to this role so much, because it does blend the artistry of teaching with the science and the makings of doing administrative work, which would be more of in a business sense. So I like the interaction of the two, and especially as one of my roles is working day to day with the teaching faculty, there is a certain even teaching in that, even if it's continuing education or updating them on. So there's a certain teaching component even to that business role, and certainly there's the business of the classroom too, all the way down to grading, to just the administrative. How do you take that 165 minutes and maximize it in terms of curriculum, but also make it seems like it goes in an instant, because it's also in some ways entertaining.
And so could you talk a bit about your role in the online program?
Yes, I do all of those things. I've taught online, which is very helpful for the administrative role, by the way, because to be boots on the ground and then be a policy maker as well is extremely helpful, to be able to see how the product gets delivered, and then you go back and you retool it to be delivered even better. So I've been lucky enough to work in array already in this short period of time of many aspects of the online program, including being a course lead, overseeing other teaching professors, teaching myself, understanding how do we build the faculty, not only as a staff, but how do we build their competencies, how do we make matches with them into the right courses. And one of my favorite things that I did that's coming up soon here is I had the honor of developing a course too, which was probably the best teacher of my online experience, because you have to go from soup to nuts. You have to build from nothing to something, and then you have to teach that something, and then you have to teach other people how to teach that something. So really going from course development all the way up to the administrative role and all points in between has really prepared me in such a way that I can help others as they take that journey. And in essence, I get both the honor and the influence to say, yes, I did that last year. Here's the kind of things that we should be thinking about. So in essence, I got the good fortune to play all the games before I instructed them.
So I know the course that you developed for the online program is the positive psychology course, and I know a lot of students are really excited about that. Could you talk a little bit about what you love most about positive psychology and where you see it fitting in even outside of the classroom?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me, and maybe for positive psychology in general, this would take more opinions on this, would be that positive psychology could be easily written off as a very nice Hallmark card expressing gratitude. But there's a whole science of how gratitude is expressed and what does it do to the brain neurobiologically, what does it do to people's emotional, cognitive, what does it do across the board, psychologically, mentally? What does it do to us spiritually? How does it feed back into our beliefs about our own culture? So while positive psychology does focus on what's right with people and what can be cultivated and capitalized on, it's not rose-colored glasses. It says that even human strengths are hard work. They're a discipline, as it would be if I was tackling a depression that I was experiencing. I have to have a certain discipline to beat that depression. Positive psychology is in the same way. It requires the same amount of work. It might be a little more fulfilling because it may not encompass the suffering that goes along with something that is an obstacle in your life, but it certainly teaches you things like courage and wisdom to endure when those sufferings appear in your life. So it's not a standalone. Positive psychology is never a standalone topic. It's how do we take, in essence, good and bad and use them both to our advantage at the same time. In essence, filling out an array of choices rather than just correcting the bad. How can we use the good to correct the bad and cultivate more good?
So as a teacher of positive psychology, I'm curious, I mean, I imagine you've thought a lot about this topic, and are there practices or things that you've learned that help keep you grounded in that perspective?
Yes, because as we all know, it's a very easy world to fall prey to either pessimism or cynicism. There's a lot of reasons to do that, and some sadly very good reasons. But the idea is teaching the resistance to that we must focus on the things that are good in life. Again, without having rose-colored glasses, but study after study shows that if we lead with the good, when the bad follows, and bad will visit us all, it becomes less intense because we know how to get to a place of centeredness. And that's the whole point, I think, of positive psychology is balance. Not to never have any bad, but to be able to modulate back and forth so when hard times hit us, we know how to get back home, in a sense, by feeling that sense of spirituality or the courage or the wisdom to endure over that thing that more often than not we know will pass with time if we can stay positive about it and not give in to what would be the suffering surrounding it.
Okay. So in the spirit of leading with the good, what's your favorite thing about teaching here at Pepperdine?
Yeah, let me go back and tell a quick story because I think it leads to this.
Okay.
I was born and raised for a short time until I was 6 or 7 in Anaheim, California here. So I used to say I grew up in the shadow of Disneyland because I did. But then I realized as I got older, I was not growing up in any shadow. I was growing up in the light of Disneyland because every night I would hear the fireworks and the pomp and circumstance. And I imagined the entertainment that was happening and the good feeling that people were getting by being right down the street watching a fireworks show at 9:42 every night. I think that kind of got into my hardwire. And so as I started to move into my career and think about what I wanted to do professionally, Walt Disney said his main goal was to educate as they entertain. So there was always a message. It's a small world. Abraham Lincoln, all those things. So I thought about that a lot, and I thought, that makes perfect sense for what he was doing. But I think in an academic setting, if you flip that model and you say we're entertaining while we're educating, the focus is on education, but the idea is you have to engage students not just in the content, but you have to engage their creativity and their imagination, and in some ways surprise them with twists of certain theories or certain ideas in order to get them thinking critically. So I've kind of adopted my whole life, sometimes unconsciously, but certainly as my teaching philosophy and my style, is the idea that no matter what the class is called, or no matter what the teaching outcomes are, I'm always in the process of entertaining while I'm educating.
So did you want to say more about your teaching philosophy?
I mean, again, course curriculum is very important, and you look to teach to the outcomes and make sure. But the idea is I always try to, it's not so much a class as putting on a show, but it's the idea of holding attention through constant surprise, elements that the students didn't expect, engaging them on a personal level. One of the mantras that I follow in every single one of my classes is the idea of we must know ourselves first. And I drive that point home such that I even have students write essays about knowing yourself first.
Okay, because I was just going to ask, how do you facilitate that in your classes?
A slide on week 1, and I don't say a word about that slide that says know yourself first. I never say a word about it. And then week 14, I send them assignment cryptically that says write about this. So unconsciously, they've been looking at the slide for 14 weeks, but we've never talked about it, except all the content of the course was about them. So now it's time to deliver on that slide that their unconscious has been focusing on for 14 weeks. Now it's time to make the unconscious conscious by saying, how will I go about knowing myself first?
And you do that regardless of the course content?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
how interesting.
Because in a psychology program, I think that applies to any course.
Sure.
In fact, I think it's a must to be an effective therapist.
Yeah.
Is if, in essence, and I'll say this kind of loosely or metaphorically, if we aren't our first client, there's going to be a problem.
Do you ever experience resistance to that approach or that idea?
No, because I understand sleight of hand enough to where I never give them a chance to ask me anything directly about it.
That's a good strategy.
And make it all unconscious. So when they say something, I just move on to the next sentence. And if after about 2 times they realize I'm not ignoring them, I'm doing that intentionally, and then they get it.
Okay.
But nonetheless, they're still ultimately surprised when I send them that slide as their last self-reflection essay. They said, I should have known, because I've been looking at it for 14 weeks, but I opened the slide and I was fully surprised. And when you can surprise students, that's when you have their attention.
So did your acting background and your creative background kind of inform this approach? Because as I'm hearing you talk, I'm just curious.
Well, this may not be the politically correct thing to say, but I will say to students often, because I'm making a point to them, because we get so many students who are changing careers. And so this speaks back to that point. The point of that I think I learned as much about being a psychologist by training as an actor as I did training as a psychologist. Because again, as an actor, you must play roles of people who aren't you, who may not be like you. You may have to play the role of a serial killer. Hopefully you have no background in that. But you have to have a certain empathy. You have to be able to walk in their shoes. You have to play it authentically. And so I'm saying the correlate to that is when you're a therapist sitting in a situation, you don't have to have gone through what the person has gone through, but you have to have some correlate in your life that you can attach to what they're going through to have that empathic feeling about them. And acting at its core, no matter what the role was, no matter what the play was always about knowing yourself first, so you know what to bring to that role that's like you about that character and what's different about you. That's where the preparation starts.